Hello, I'm Mark.
And I'm Amelia.
Today in this video we're going to look at air rifle pellets.
So if we start with caliber, which is the main thing you're going to need to know when you're choosing which pellet to use, we of course have 177 and 22. There's also .20 and .25 as well.
We also then have head sizes. Very difficult to say because you've got a particular air rifle that it's going to be exactly the same as somebody else who's got the same rifle. Different guns might prefer slightly different head sizes, so a little bit of trial and error.
So if we start off with the most basic design, which is a domed pellet. So here we have a fairly standard weight domed 177 pellets. So domed pellets are normally where people start. They're a good all-rounder, good for target work, good for distance work, good for hunting as well. You tend to get more variations or options in terms of weight and head sizes when it comes to domed. If you have a pointed pellet or a hunting style pellet, that might only be available in one weight and one head size per design.
I think another thing we really ought to mention is that the vast majority of air rifle pellets are lead pellets. It has good stopping power and good weight. There are a variety of lead-free pellets on the market, but they tend to be a lot lighter. They're okay for short-range work. If we move on now to having a look at a different type of pellet, we're going to have a look here at a flat-headed pellet. So this is a tin of Excite Plinking. There you can see a flat head. The skirt is the same. These are a fairly lightweight pellet. They typically tend to be in 177 caliber rather than 22. And the primary use for a lighter weight flat-headed pellet is for fairly short-range target work. So they work particularly well in CO2 pistols. And just by way of a comparison, we also have some probably some slightly better engineered QYS target pellets. Now these will be about 3 or 4 times the price of the Excite Plinking, but they will be manufactured to a much smaller tolerance level than the Excite Plinking. What you're paying for really is real consistency. Every one of these pellets should be very close together, so they are favoured generally by quite experienced target shooters who will appreciate the lack of difference in a pellet. So we've looked at domed pellets, we've looked at flat-headed pellets. Now we'll have a look at hunting or hollow-pointed pellets. So we've got here a tin of JSB Hades. So if we can have a look at this pellet here, you will notice that there's some cuts into the dome. So it's still a domed pellet, but there's perforations into the head there. And the idea with that is it's going to give you increased stopping power if you're shooting quarry.
So that hollow point there is going to actually mushroom and expand on impact, which is what gives it such a devastating effect.
There is another type of pellet called a pointed head. We don't have an example of a pointed head here as such. The downside to pointed heads is that ballistically they're not as consistent as domed or flat-headed pellets, so you don't get to truer flight with an actual pointed pellet. But we do have over here from a manufacturer called QYS, if we can see the pellets there, they do a streamlined pellet. Now this has proved very popular because, as you can see, although it's not pointed as such, it's a domed. It's almost a halfway house between a dome and a pointed. So that's got around the problem of the poor ballistics. These will fly just as true as a domed pellet.
So with the QIS, these come in 2 different weights, don't they? So if you were shooting your rifle, which one would you pick and why at what distances?
They come in 2 weights, an 8.44 and a 9.56 grain. So there's not a huge difference between the two. But generally speaking, I think the rule of thumb is that if you're looking for a little bit more distance, go for the slightly lighter weight. So the 8.4s, if you're going to be shooting, at a distance of about 30 yards or more, go for the 8.4s. If you want a little bit more stopping power at a shorter distance, so once you're coming in from that 25 yards inwards, maybe look at the heavier weight.
And a similar logic goes with all calibres, doesn't it, in terms of weight of pellet and distance that you're shooting at?
Yes, yeah. So, particularly 177, very popular with target shooters looking for the extra distance. So, typically we'll be trying to keep the weight of a pellet down. So, 8.4 and under if you're really looking for the longer distance. If you're looking for a bit more stopping power, particularly with the 2.2s, a little bit more weight. So you can often go from 15.8 grains might be a standard weight pellet. You might then decide you could do with something a bit heavier like an 18 grain.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of slightly pointed pellets, we do have a couple of hunting specific pellets here, which are also pointed but have a tip made of a different material. So if we start with the H&N Hornets, so as you can see here, this pointed tip is actually made from brass. The reason it's designed this way is because when this pellet hits the prey, the brass tip is actually going to continue penetrating and it's going to leave behind this lead base, which is then essentially a hollow point in itself. So these are really, really good pellets for pest control.
And then moving on to the polymags, something very similar. If we can have a look there, these have a polymer tip to them. One thing probably to look out for in the polymags is that these come in both a short and a long skirt. So by far the more popular is the short, and the reason being for that is that they cycle much better in the magazines. That wraps up the standard pellet. So if we have a look at the slugs now, so we have some slugs here by a company called FX, who also makes some pretty good air guns. So let's just we can see a design of what the slug is like on the outside, and we can have a look at the slug there. So much larger than a standard pellet, which has a waist and a skirt. This is a long slug, but with the hollow point. So typically tend to be heavier than an airgun pellet, but also with the great stopping power of the hollow point. And these are becoming far more popular these days.
Yep. So slugs are mostly designed for PCP rifles. They're also a lot of the time for FAC rifles when you get to the higher weights. So as slugs are increasing in popularity, we are finding that they're becoming available more in the lower weights, which are suitable for sub 12 foot-pound rifles. But we would say if you have a 177, stick to the 13 grain options available, maybe the 16, but you don't want to go shooting anything above 20 and 177. As for 2.2, they do a 21 grain variety, 23 grain, but once you start getting too heavy, really that's for FAC use only, because your rifle is just not going to have the power to give you a decent trajectory on this.
And finally, if we'd like to look at the BBs, Amelia.
So with BBs, you don't have to worry about head size. They're all 177. You don't have to worry in terms of big varieties of weights and designs either. One thing we would say though is that you can buy unbranded large bags of BBs online quite easily. We have tested them out before and have had mixed results, so we'd always suggest sticking with an airgun brand of BBs, such as the Umarex or the Crossman.
And then, as you can see, there are two main types here. So we've either got steel BBs or copperhead. Really, the difference is that the copperhead are slightly heavier and again, going to give you a little bit more punch than a lighter weight steel BB. And so, in conclusion, I would say There's a lot of pellets on the market. There's a very small selection of what we sell here. We just bought a few tins out for illustration purposes.
I think we stock probably over 150 variations when we take into account head size and weight varieties as well. And also, if you've tried a few pellets and you know a couple that your gun has gotten on with, a couple that you haven't done too well with, you can always come and ask us and we can make recommendations based off of what has worked well for you in the past.
That's it. So thanks for watching our little video on airgun pellets, and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. And if there are any other video ideas you want us to cover in the future, let us know by dropping us a comment below.